First off, I don't really think that the average man is going about, or the average adult male is going about asking himself whether or not he is a man or not by definition. Reason for that is because when you're of age, you automatically assume that you are a man. And it only gets messed up when people go into conversations, especially between the sexes, male and female, where we want to define what a man is. And it becomes a bit complicated. Actually, well, it depends on how you want to see it. It can become very complicated. Um, I think one of the major elephants in the room that is just there, and I don't see anybody facing it, is that sorry, is that um, man is not defined. I think man is not defined. I think that um, many of us would like for it to be defined. I think that or some people have general ideas of what man is, but it is not. It doesn't have a finite definition of what man is. The title, not man as male, but man as a title. I don't think that there's been a definition that the majority or all of humans have accepted. I think that there are quite a bit of vague ideas of what a man is, and we also vaguely accept them, and who can meet those criteria to be able to call themselves man. But the elephant in the room is that, or the one I'm mentioning now, is that it is not defined. No one has defined it. And to think that all men are the same is one of the shallowest things that anybody could admit to. You know, um, we're very different as human beings, not just male, but male and female. We're very different. We value an incredible amount of different things and devalue an incredible amount of different things also. And so, with that, you cannot have a one fits all definition of what anything is, or at least of what man is, because you can go back, and people often say, back in the day, there used to be a finer definition of what a man is, but that's not true. That's not true. There hasn't been a rite of passage into what man is. Even back then, or even now, really, when you go into the really, really, undeveloped areas of the world, and you have this native tribes that turn children into a rite of passage and then becoming man and all of that. And that's, to me, you know, to me, that's one of the dumbest ideas that I can think of. I understand it's culture, but it's still dumb. Still dumb because you can't grab a 15-year-old boy and cut his skin and they say, okay, now you're a man, go out there and be somebody. It doesn't work like that. At least not in a civilized world. You gotta know your ins and outs. You know, uh, but to them, once that rite of passage is done, then okay, now you're a man. And I disagree with it. I'm in my right. If somebody else might agree with it, they're in their right. And that is precisely the problem, that we can all define what a man is, and we can all argue that we are right and that they are wrong, and that's precisely the problem. That is why we are at where we are at, because there is no definition. There is nowhere in a textbook or in a freaking stone from the Stone Ages where it has been engraved a definition that no one can argue of what a man is, the title man, you know. And there are some that care themselves to go about writing scriptures and books and sociologists and psychologists and just influential people that know how to write that will go about publishing what they think is a man, you know, and some people will pick up on it and others don't. And that's the thing. When you have some that pick it up and others that don't, you didn't create a definition. You just created one more controversy because now we have yet another channel to fight on what a man is because all men will not pick up one definition fits all. You know, you have areas that are very violent, and so in that particular environment, the men that prosper in that environment have to be violent. And so for that particular subculture, if you're not violent, then you are not a man. You know, to them, if you're a coward, then you are definitely not a man. You know, they'll call you derogatory, titles, which I'm not going to mention now. I ain't trying to make nobody upset. But they do, however, take away the title of man from you because you're not violent. So you can't be a man. And you have other areas like you cannot sit there and say, if you want to think this thoroughly, that every man that is not violent is not a man, especially if you're a woman, because then that would be detrimental to you guys as a reality of the world, you know. But you're not being violent doesn't take away you being able to be a man, in my opinion. Because there are some traits of what men are generally doing that are present in men that are not violent. If you're not a violence-oriented man, you could go into um, politics where it's not physically violent, it's verbally violent, um, but it's not physically violent. So you can go there. I believe that you might be able to find lawyers that have not fought a single fight in their life and they're successful and they are titled or self-titled as men. you know I believe there may be, say, I don't know, preachers are non-violent. They preach non-violence, you know and does it mean that a preacher is not a man? So you have various walks of life that uh, differ extremely from one to the other, and they differ so much. Then and that means that there has to be uh, a crack in the system. There has to be something wrong because um, all non-violent man cannot say that non-violence defines you as man. If you can turn the other cheek, that makes you a man. No, violence is very necessary. When appropriate, violence is extremely necessary. Extremely necessary. You cannot have a human society or a culture where no man is violent or no man has the potential for violence. Violence has to be there. It has to be a threat. Violence has to be a threat. Does that mean that all men have to be violent? No. Every single human being is not a Navy SEAL. All men are not Green Berets. There are some, excuse my French, but there are some bitch ass men. Sorry, there are. There are weak men. But because you're physically weak doesn't mean that you cannot be titled as a man, because no one has a concrete definition of what man is, and that's the problem. You know, that's the problem. And I think the other thing is that, oh really, that us not facing the fact that we do not have a fine definition of what a man is what creates all of this nonsense that we are living. And we can just say that it's, frustrated people on YouTube talking shit and all that, but it isn't. It does affect a lot of people. People that are gone after mentally and sometimes physically, and sometimes men that go after their own selves because they don't fit the criteria of what they have heard man defined as. Men uh, that are trying to be something they are not. Okay, I was told I was supposed to be strong. I'm trying to be strong. I cannot be strong, so I'm gonna kill myself. Or men that say, okay, you know what? I like other men sexually. I like them, but I'm a man. I like being a man. Now what? Well, we don't define you as man. You're something else. Something's wrong with your head. You're sick. The man believes it, kills himself. Or they live in the shadows, or they live in embarrassment, or they live in depression, anxiety, all of that stuff. So it does affect you, you know. And it doesn't necessarily have to be all those, out the world definitions. It could also be just a man that is not violent, and he has a wife and kids, and the wife, for some weird reason, and those reasons do exist, for some weird reason, she wants to see uh, bravery in that man, and she wants to see that man, be rough and tough, and that man lives in depression because he's not violent, or you have a violent man who is violent because of whatever the reasons he is violent, and he is put in correctional institutions, or he is shamed in the world because he's prone to violence, and females are scared of him because he's violent. And he will also be confused. He will also be depressed. He will also be anxious. He will also be all of those things, though you may not see it that way in him, because he will portray those as anger. He will go at you because he's not afraid. So he will show you all of those insecurities as anger, you know, and all of the shootings, all of the uh, suicides, all of the drug consumptions, all of that is because we as humans struggle with self-definition. And when we send out into the world and say, be a man, but won't nobody define a man before they open the door. They'll just be like, okay, go out there and be somebody. Be a man. You have no idea how many marital fights have occurred where a woman, I need a man. Be a man. And if you quiet them down, if you sit them down, if you allow no excuses, if you allow no vague definitions, and give them a pen, both to the man and to the woman, and write out what a man is, and tell them that everybody else in this world is going to read that definition, you you won't get one. You won't get one. You get vague definitions of what man is, you know, and I think that's wrong. You know, I think that's wrong. So, I just feel like somewhere along the line, and I hope, and in my years, and while I'm living, somebody could sit down and say that we don't know what a man is. Let us all come to an agreement of what a man is. You know, because one person sitting down and saying what he thinks is a man isn't going to solve the problem because somebody will disagree with him. And some lady who thinks she knows what a man is, and she writes a book about it, is definitely not going to do it. I really don't even know what will do it, but I know what won't, you know. And some Harvard guy is sitting down because he is a sociologist and he studied history and he studied the current day and he thinks he knows what a man is. Half of the people won't even get to the book, you know. They won't. So you have some who think they know, some who agree, some who disagree, and some who don't give a shit. I don't.